welcome back to the Toxin Free-ish podcast. We are not in my home studio. We're in New York City.
Amazing.
Yeah. We're in the same city. You're in America.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is reality.
Yeah. And we planned this like a week ago.
Yeah, and you just made it happen
I
like
made
this.
It happen. It all fell together. So, Michael, you're the founder of eczema, which you were on the podcast about a year ago.
Yeah.
You are one of the only completely 100% organic cotton plant dyed textile bedsheet. Yeah, I mean,
Mouthful.
Although it's a mouthful, and one of my favorites. I talk about you all the time. In the last year, what has eczema been up to?
One amazing thing we did was meeting you in Minnesota. We did this Healthy Threads Summit in Minnesota with the very cool people from the Toxi
Free-ish.
The store.
Toxi Free,
yeah.
Yep.
Toxi Free. Laura and Bezat, they're amazing. And then we had all these like journalists and Alden Wicker and like really giants of sort of the industry coming there, and like these whistleblowers from 3M. And I mean, it was really, really cool. And that was one of the amazing things that we did in the last year, where we could really feel like suddenly there was like a room of like more than 100 people, and everybody was like, yes, this is important. And it was on TV as well, so it was really cool. We've done a few other cool things. I think one of the most amazing things that I would like to report is that we're actually doing pretty well as a company, which is nice. Which is not the case for the last 8 years.
Yeah, I think you're trying to do something that nobody's ever done before. So that's hard.
Yeah, maybe it's the time, or I don't know, but it's finally starting to really work out. And it's good for my mental health as well.
Well, I got to meet you in person for the first time in Minnesota for the Healthy Threads Summit, and Alden Wicker, who wrote the book to Die For, was there. It was incredible meeting her. The owners of Toxi Free were so fantastic. And there also was the parents of Amara. You know, Minnesota, where we were, is one of the first states to pass significant PFAS legislation. It actually just went into effect earlier this year, I believe. And it was surprising to everyone that Minnesota would be the state to kind of come out and say, you cannot add PFAS to, and the list was long, very, very, very long. And it was because Amara's parents lobbied and fought for that. And you got to meet them too.
I spoke with them. And, it's kind of, sometimes, I mean, we are doing this because it became a real thing for me when my mother was sick, and I just realized, textiles can have an effect on a body. My mother wasn't healthy, but and then of course sometimes you forget and all this like sustainable blah 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 whatever, and people, it's very self-congratulatory.
Yes.
And then when you realize, hey, when you meet these parents, you realize, hey, we have these like weird high cancer rates. There are immune disorder problems. We have a lot of customers, I mentioned that before, with MCS, this multiple chemical sensitivity, or TSW, topical steroid withdrawal, who are really, really sick. Like, and they, if we were lying to them, they would find out, like the next day they say, oh, I'm all like red and have rashes. But to actually meet somebody or meet parents whose daughter has, died, and of course you don't know exactly what it is, but there is definitely a connection with the PFAS in the drinking water and also in the consumer product. To me, like, and that the kind words that they had for us, it made me really tear up and go like, oh, it's like, oh, I think I just stammered. I didn't know what to say. And it's really amazing that they use probably, this immense pain that they have to push for better regulation. And, this regulation is where it really, I think where we often talk to is where this is the whole issue, that all of this is allowed, right? And there's absolutely no safety check. It's just, it is allowed, and that's why it's done.
So let's get out of our echo chamber for a little bit, because you and I are in this field. This is what we do all day long. We talk about it all day long, but my podcast listeners maybe don't necessarily understand why it's such a big deal. So let's talk a little bit about what the problem is with the current textile industry. So I think people are starting to realize and recognize polyester is plastic and it's terrible for us, right? And then the secondary piece of that is, what are the chemicals and the dyes that are being added to the polyester, which we are then wearing all day long, sleeping in our sheets all day long, using our towels all day long, right? We have like all day, all the time, constant exposure. And I do think people are becoming more aware. Like you said, the community, the multiple chemical sensitivity community is starting to get really loud about our clothing and our textiles are completely unregulated and they're highly toxic.
Yeah.
So if you're, a business owner like you are, like you said, the last 8 years have been kind of slow, but now people are starting to catch steam and understand, oh, not only are there chemicals in my cleaning products, they're in my fragrance, but now I have to think about my linens
Yeah.
and my
Another
clothing.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just another thing to talk about and think about. But if you're talking to somebody who's at home listening to this maybe for the first time,
Yeah.
what are some of the very basic things to take into consideration if you're somebody who does have rashes and allergies or eczema or psoriasis or things like that? Because we're starting to see a lot of skin conditions.
Yeah, I mean, the WHO calls, skin conditions, allergies, the major epidemic of this century. So it is a huge thing. And one frustrating thing is that most of the time, this will lead marketers to say like, oh, there's a skin cream, oh, there's something else you can buy. Instead of let's look what you have in your life that may cause these problems, rather than thinking you have a fundamental issue with your health and you need medicine. Like that's this whole consumer narrative that is something else you should buy. And there are endless examples of parents that they see it on their children that's different than on your own body, and then they say, oh, what's going on with my children, and they switch to cotton or they switch to other materials, and then the rashes disappear. And, that's a sort of an immediate thing. And most people, when they're in the age when they have kids, when you're 20, you're like, I don't care, whatever. I'm young, I'm healthy. The cheapest is
You're
good enough for me.
invincible. My teenagers always say, you think you're invincible,
Yeah.
but that soda you're drinking is going to catch up to you.
And it is not. But like if you it depends who I'm speaking to. If I'm speaking to somebody in my age, I would say, you'll see it on your children, and obviously it affects you as well. Plus, to really drive it in, this rash is just a sign that something is not well. This can be a health issue much down the line, much, much later. A lot of PFAS, a lot of chemicals, asbestos, things that just show up 15 years later, 20 years later. And these things are not good for kids, like polyester, a lot of these synthetic colors, formaldehyde, all commonly used in all textiles. They're not good. And there's absolutely no proof that they are good. That's the crazy thing. Nobody has ever said, oh, it's good. They're just like, oh,
Completely unregulated.
Yeah.
So South Korea did that huge study on Shein and Temu, and the number and the amount of chemicals, like bad, nasty, gross, like lead, heavy metals, phthalates, PFAS, BPA, just smothered in it. It's literally smothered in it, but we have this fast fashion. I want the $6 nail polish. We call Shein and Temu like contraband in our house. Like my kids know, like if you even dare try to order something from those companies, and I get asked a lot, well, why is that legal? If there's so many bad things in textiles, why is it legal? And I get the same question about personal care products and fragrance and all of that. But what's the answer?
Well, I can talk mostly about the US and Europe. And the US, the idea is innocent until proven guilty. And the US companies can use, for example, much higher amounts of formaldehyde because the proof to saying, the cancer that person had came from this chemical cannot be given, scientifically valid. But let's just, I mentioned the word asbestos, and asbestos is not in textiles as far as I know, but asbestos is just a mineral that once it's in the air, it locks into your lungs and makes you sick, and you'll get sick 20 years later. And so, I think that's one of the issues. It'd be very hard to, do this. And this is just one mineral, but there are 10,000 and more different kind of chemicals through this kind of scientific explosion of working with plastics, with polymers. We just have all these chemicals, and they're very hard to study. 20 years later, oh, this made you sick. But if you reverse it and say hey, let's prove it's safe, that would be a much better bar to clear. Europe is a bit more on this side. On paper, Europe says you have, there needs to be convincing link between disease and health, and then it's regulated. But in Europe, it's only 23 different kinds of chemicals that are regulated in textiles. And
23 more than in America.
23 more than America, but like a little bit less formaldehyde and all that. But it's still, there are literally thousands of chemicals that very conservative scientists say, like, we really should study them before we put them
I think the
on our
last
skin.
report I saw, there's 10,000 registered proprietary chemicals on the market. And that means we don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
They're proprietary.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows. And to your point, we can just put them into our environment, into whatever, and sell them. And the reason why it's so hard to prove that these are a problem is because you have your drinking water, you have your diet, you have your clothing, you have your personal care products, you have your air pollution, you have your indoor air, you have all of these things that could potentially impact your health. You can't say, oh, it's that one thing that increased my risk, right? It's like this entourage effect. And so what happens, and this is just in the chemical industry in general also, nobody's held responsible. Then there's no regulation, because if there's 10 things that cause cancer, well, those 10 chemical companies get to sit in a room and go, not it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think we have, we live in this world where like the politics, they are very beholden to big companies saying, oh, that would be bad for our profit line. And the regulations are like always, how low can they possibly be? And that's, I think that's one of the huge issues. And you can see it like even with banned chemicals. One of the best examples is azo dye. That's just a group of dyes that have irrefutably linked to cancer. Like, story is over, cause cancer very bad. It's not illegal in America. It is illegal in Europe. However, every time any consumer agency does tests, they're used everywhere. They're all the time everywhere. In clothes. I mean, I think the Swedish government did a check and they found it in 20% of the clothes they checked. So the problem is, even when we decide this is bad, there's no enforcement. And then
there's no one checking.
Yeah, and then the brand says like, oh, I'm just the brand. I'm not the manufacturer. Who's the manufacturer? We don't know. We bought it from like this guy, and he bought it from this guy and this guy on the other side of the world. That's the whole issue with this, like how this is. And it's really problematic if we don't want to be too philosophical. So what are you going to do about it? Like, you as the consumer, you still, unless you decide full-term nudist, like you still need to wear clothes. You want to wear clothes. And then how do you choose something?
So let's go there. Let's go from the philosophical regulatory. Let's get like if
that's what you told me before we started.
Right before the podcast,
not too much
I was like, let's be like on the ground level with people who are literally standing in Target or at a department store, or they're going online and they are like, okay, I want to have cleaner, safer clothes. By the way, it's a funny story. And I think last week on the podcast, I told it, but I took your sheets with me on my 2-week trip to Bali. And the internet lost their minds because I took a carry-on only. And when you fly Emirates and you go all the way to Bali, you get one carry-on, 15 pounds. And they're very serious about it. And of all the things like that I needed for that 2-week trip, like my Azomi sheets.
Did you just take the pillow or the whole set?
I took the pillowcase and then I took the sheet, the top sheet.
That's commitment.
Because I can just lay that on top. But it is such a big deal to me. On the last time I had you on the podcast, I shared that I have suffered from tinea versicolor for a very, very long time. I have done all of the topical treatments. I have done all the things that every doctor has ever told me to do. All the gut health stuff, right? All the things that everyone says it's very stress related. And it wasn't until I started sleeping on your sheets that, I mean, I'm talking weeks. Like weeks, it went away. And I'm very sensitive to like fabric softeners and laundry detergents. So I was traveling with sheets anyway. Now I just travel with your sheets because it's just not worth it to me to like be on polyester, be on dyes, maybe have a skin condition come back, maybe have a headache triggered. It's just not worth it to me. So yes, I prioritized my Azomi sheets in my 15-pound carry-on bag. But it sparked a lot of conversation. Okay, so what are we supposed to buy? Like if we can't afford to buy like 100% cotton, organic cotton, right? GOT certified, Okotex certified, plant-based dyes, and there's not a lot of options. You guys have great options, but for the regular consumer who's out there shopping, what are the things that they should look for and prioritize?
Yeah, so I'm very happy to hear that. And I just it makes me happy to hear it, even though we hear it all the time from customers that we speak to. And we are very anal with the whole production process, and it's very complicated for us to make the things, but we really want to know everything that goes in there, and we want to make sure that even people who are going through chemotherapy and have absolutely no immune system anymore, will not react to anything and that's in there, any pollution. So, and
I mean, you guys don't even use detergents.
We don't use
in the production
no, we don't
process
use,
of the which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy that you found somebody willing to change their process for you.
Yeah, it's a negotiation. You got to go to these factories, and what we always do, I think, sort of our joke is always they say like, "Oh, we have organic or whatever," and then we say, "No, it's not about It's basically we say we don't care about the environment. We're a medical company," and they go like, "Yeah," and then we show them pictures of, for example, people with severe eczema or TSW, and it's like these are our clients, like these are the people who buy from us. They cannot, like, anything that's in there, they will react to it. So even if you tell us it's not in there and then it's in there, they'll find
It
out.
washes out.
And
No,
we'll
it
write it.
doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and we'll write it in the contract. So because we say, and it's true, we are a medical company, we're FDA regulated, that we can speak differently with the manufacturers in saying like, this is serious. It's not some marketing claim that we just want to write somewhere to sell more stuff. But yeah, you're saying, so I can tell you what I do. By the way, you asked me what's new. I have another daughter now. That's new.
Yes, I did know that. Yes, congratulations.
Very blessed. Another one. Yeah. And, when you have, like, I'm very sensitive when I see my kids being like, if they get whatever, blankets and so on, like anything that's polyester, like I'm out right away. And anything.
So you don't own, there's nothing in your house that's polyester.
There probably is somewhere, but nothing that's, somewhere, I don't know, under a carpet but there's no, I don't think there's.
I'm assuming you have your own bed sheets on every
bed.
day.
Yeah, of course. But there are sometimes polyester seams and things. If you really look detailed, but overall there is nothing. There's no polyester blanket, no polyester clothes. Like polyester, I think plastic has its use, but not on garments, and especially not on garments that touch your skin, and especially not on sensitive people. There have all kinds of problems with polyester.
A new recent study, actually multiple studies, if you go back over the last 20 years, multiple studies showing that polyester really impacts your hormones, decreases fertility, especially men. They showed a dramatic decrease in testosterone and the ability to get a woman pregnant. And then it took months, depending on the study that you look at, but then the body, after you remove the polyester, it was polyester underwear, then the hormones came back up. So we do know that polyester does impact our hormones. I think everyone has kind of accepted that. I don't think it's become like mainstream, but I think everyone who's in the industry knows that.
And the thing that I want to just tell anybody who's like on the fence, or should I care or not, like, this is your health and your body, and the reason why these companies market polyester to you, there's no other reason other than it's a very cheap material. So literally you let people tell you this is great for you, and advertisement and whatever, they have some celebrity promoting a product. It's a very cheap product, and you're buying the cheapest product. Like, you literally buying dog food, like, because you're like, ooh, that is dog food, it's good. Like, just don't buy polyester on clothes that on your skin. There's of course an argument for whatever rain jackets, but generally if you wear it on your skin, it shouldn't be polyester.
I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around that polyester is plastic, right? Because I think people think plastic, like plastic bottles, water bottles, or tubing, things that are made out of plastic. But when you go to Target and you go into their pajama section, which is very popular, and they have all these like silky smooth, very comfortable pajamas, I think it's hard for just the population in general to wrap their head around that's plastic.
Yeah, and the bed sheets, that with this like neon print for kids, they're terrible. The thing is, clothes should help you to regulate your temperature. They should support your health. That's literally why we have clothes, like supportive of your health. And these polyester products, they don't help you with temperature regulation very well, and they kind of harm you as you're wearing them. So they're literally the opposite of clothes.
I saw an interesting conversation about the reason why polyester does impact fertility is actually the heat. Like, it makes us hot. So we can't regulate our temperature. It's not breathable. And so that's what causes, especially in men, when you're looking at like men's boxers and things like that.
Yeah, I haven't heard this, but I can imagine there's we always say there are 3 kinds of irritation you can get from textile: mechanical, pathogenic, and chemical. Mechanical is literally the friction, and polyester rubs very hot, like it gets really hot. And then chemical are all the chemicals that are in there. And that's a huge problem with polyester. And polyester also tends to attract environmental chemicals that just stick to the polyester. And pathogenic is not a problem with new polyester textiles, but the longer you have polyester textiles, the more pathogens just live in there. Smelly. Maybe people know that, like, they have this polyester shirt and the smell just does not go out because it's oil, dirt.
Okay,
I want
to talk about this because this conversation just came up, I want to say like a week ago. So in my community, which is full of people who are trying to live cleaner, more toxin-free in their homes and in their environment, they will switch to like a cleaner laundry detergent and have a hard time, right? Because a lot of them don't have like harsh surfactants in it. And so they don't necessarily, if you have like really hard water, they don't work as well. So in the middle of this conversation, I said to everyone, I said, I want you to go smell your clothes and tell me which ones are cotton and which ones are polyester. Because I own some polyester clothes that I've had for a long time. And there is a distinct smell that I cannot get out of them. Yeah. And I finally went down the rabbit hole and I was like, it's the polyester.
Yeah, it is the polyester. It's
totally the polyester.
And that's bacteria that's in the clothes that you can't get rid of. That's the smell.
I'm like soaking it in vinegar and I'm like doing all the nothing's working.
Yeah, and it's very bad because like we have a lot of bacteria in our skin and it shouldn't be disturbed. It's perfect as God made it. And when you put something on there with other bacteria, especially these like this kind of badly smelling things, that disturbs your skin biome. It's not good.
So I got to get rid of them.
Yeah, it's okay.
I switched out a lot. By the way, I got dressed. Before I got on my plane this morning to New York City, I was like, I cannot interview.
Michael will judge me.
He will judge me if I'm in polyester. So I have my jean jacket is 100% recycled cotton. Yeah. I'm in a linen made the label dress. My boots are leather from Nisolo, which is like really good quality. I think it's a vegetable tan type company. And then I have my leather bag that I bought at Toxin Free and Miss. I'm head to toe. Everything I own is natural fiber.
And you look fantastic.
Oh, thank you. But I do own a couple polyester things that are super cute. And it is hard to find things that are more like business related that have natural fiber. So I do know that, I'm always going to have a few things that are polyester. But for the most part, I'm 100% cotton and linen. And as far as like, underwears, bras, things I wear daily. I have your regenerative organic cotton plant dyed t-shirts that I live in. I've made a big transition in my life.
Every step you do is much better. And that's why we started with bed sheets, because we're like, where do we even start, right? And we were like, oh, that's the textile you touch the most. So you basically have cleaned up 30% of your life.
And you sleep 8 hours. Hopefully you sleep 8 hours.
I sleep more.
It's good. I'm so jealous.
If I can, if the kids are not crying.
But you're in your bed like for a lot of your life. Yeah. So that makes total sense.
Yeah. And it's also important, to not just like, we live in this day and age, so you can't get away from it. And it's also not like perfect should not be the enemy of better. Yep. Every choice you can make, and I mean, that's one of the biggest philosophical issues why often you can't make, because the label doesn't tell you, there's no law, there's no regulation. But every step that you can make, it makes a big difference. And for me, you mentioned before, your condition went away using our bed sheets. I slept for a few days now in a hotel on some whatever bed sheets, and I get dandruff like literally like this. Yeah. And I think it's the friction, it's the chemicals, it's the laundry. It's of course not our pillowcase.
In hotels, you don't even want to know how they launder their. Yeah. See, that's why I travel with my own sheets.
Yeah, and that makes a difference. It's worth it, even the trouble taking it on the plane.
Okay, so back to the normal everyday person. I always say cotton first. Underwear, bras, things you wear every day. Just try to find 100% cotton somewhere.
Yeah. I think so too. I mean, I love cotton. I think it's just a fantastic product. And it's been for the longest time of human history the favorite product to make textiles out of. King cotton, right? Hemp is great too. Linen is great. They tend to be a bit harder in the beginning. And I think that's Wool, yeah, of course. Wool is fantastic. And then there are these like semi-synthetic things, and there I think you need to have a lot of subtext when it comes to bamboo, rayon, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They can be better than fully synthetic polyester, but they're usually blends and they need a lot of chemical. And there we get into the territory of like massive marketing. Bamboo, natural bamboo, which is one of the few incidences where the FTC said like that's even too much for us. It's definitely not natural.
Yeah, the amount of chemicals required to turn bamboo into what it is. There is a mechanical way to do it, but very few. I mean, it would be rare that that's actually how it's being made. What about things like tencel? Things that are like wood. I'm seeing a lot of like wood-based textiles.
So Tencel is a company, I think a Swiss company, and it's a trademark. So Tencel is basically, they said, hey, that you can do so much, what's the word? Not hanky-panky. What's the word? Like you can do so much blah, blah with this technology and then have a really lower quality product with a lot of chemicals. Shenanigans. That's what I was looking at. Not hanky-panky.
Very English word.
Yeah. So that they said we'll register our process as a patent, blah, blah. And if it says Tencel, we've made it and we guarantee, we've managed the chemicals well and so on. But it's also a rayon. It's rayon. It's also the same, turning wood pulp into fiber. And you just got to imagine, as you mentioned, how to make something as hard as wood into something as soft as silk takes a lot of chemicals. And most of the companies don't have a strict management thing, so a lot of chemicals go to the environment, and then also are residual in the fabric. And that this specifically was marketed as the best for people with sensitive skin. That's just, most of the cases not true. But
that's like draft laundry detergent saying #1 pediatrician recommended, right?
Yeah.
Like they found a pediatrician somewhere and was like,
#1,
hey,
that pediatrician, my cousin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tencel, hey, if you have sensitive skin, and I think your basic stuff that you have should be made from cotton, hemp, and wool. I think that's as easy as that. And those things, one of the arguments that
linen,
linen. And the big industries often saying, oh, but the environment, blah blah. And I love when they take their concern for the environment as a reason against cotton, which happens in Europe right now. That they say, but polyester, it's just was already here, right?
If you want to watch me flip my lawyer switch and get me worked up, come at me with petroleum-derived plastic polyester is better for the environment than growing cotton. Let's go. And I understand why people fall for that argument, right? Like, yes, cotton is very water heavy. Cotton has like the most pesticides of any crop. That's why you grow it organically and regeneratively.
Yeah.
And so let's have a conversation about how we grow cotton better in a way that actually improves the environment, and don't make the excuse that, crappy people are making crappy toxic cotton out there.
I know that it's a business. Of course, they'll make this argument, and they just do the same with plant dyes. They're saying, oh, but we're competing for agricultural space with like people who need to grow food crops and so on.
They say this. So I just helped support the formulation and the launch of Wild Notes, which is a 100% botanical perfume, right? And in that perfume space, they make the same argument. Oh, these synthetically derived, petroleum-derived, fragrance chemicals that they're calling safe synthetics is better for the environment because we have to grow so many plants to like make your product.
I guess they're probably trying to, come up with an argument that's going to. But the thing is, and that's what I think is one of the things I think is so fascinating about cotton. And that precedes me even being in textiles. I lived in Japan and I love going to antique markets. They have these really cool antique markets where there's all the samurai stuff. And there were always these like old indigo textiles. I'm like, they're really expensive too, right? And they patch together. And it seemed to be like some special stores. And eventually I dared to go to one of them because they're all like, it's up to $1,000 for like old rags. And I was, what's so special about them? And like this guy showed me and said like, look, and it was this like really almost as blue as that, like really super nice blue textile, and had some kind of marking. And he's like, this marking, we can say it's the year of whatever emperor was there. It's like, this is 280 years old. And I was like, how is this cotton-made towel with like this inscription on it. How is that? Like almost
380 years old.
And I think that's one of the amazing things about like, you know, proper textile culture. Like you can make these things last really, really long time, you know. And if it's plant dyed and made in this way, eventually you can just discard it into the environment and will fall apart and just become soil again. And to me, that's just one of those things where I just feel like this whole idea you need to use plastic so it's more durable, as if the durability is what the industry is concerned about. The industry is concerned you buy a lot all the time, which is exactly also health-wise one of the biggest problems. Practical, we can always say now practical advice. The newer textiles are, the more chemicals they have that will leach off the chemicals or that can be absorbed by your body. So one of the practical advices I'll give is always wash a lot before you wear it first time. Fun.
Multiple times. If I buy anything, even 100% cotton, because I know that the things that I'm buying, so like I love Mate the Label. I buy a lot of things from them. Organic Basics is another company making some good cotton stuff. Even them, because they're not plant dyeing. And so when I bring them into my house, I wash them multiple times. And to your point, fast fashion, it's so interesting in our culture and our psychology, and it's kind of the Amazon effect is what I call it. People will spend a little bit more money if they can get free shipping because it's that immediate, they feel like they're getting something free. I feel like fast fashion is the same way. Oh, I can get that thing for like $12. That t-shirt is only costing me $12. Well, give it 10 washes and it's going to fall apart. And in the next year, you're going to buy 10 of those shirts. But if you had just bought a really good, high quality organic cotton shirt, and like it would last forever. So my sheets I've had now a year. I mean, they look brand new, and they've been washed once a week for an entire year. And 10 years from now, I bet you those sheets are still going to be good quality.
We'll even guarantee it.
You're going to guarantee it?
We're guaranteeing it, yeah. I think we have a 10-year warranty on manufacturing, and we have hotels that washed our sheet like for 6 years almost every day, and they don't start pilling and so on. They just made proper, like they just made how textiles should be made.
But people can actually save money buying better quality, but it's in our current culture, our consumerism culture. I want cheaper, but then we buy more. And the only people that benefit from that are the large corporations that are selling us their products.
And that's one of the most important things when it comes to health and textiles is just buy less but better. Like buy things, look for better materials. And, you know, most companies will still give you a trial period. We give a year trial period because I think people should actually try it through all 4 seasons, and we have almost no returns. But like most companies have some kind of return policy, like try it out and then feel really good that you've spent, you know, you've looked into the material, you've tried it out and feel good and really love that product. But marketing is just like, oh, buy, forget, throw away, buy something new. And the issue with that is really most chemical load is when they come off the factory. The thing I mentioned before, this bacterial buildup is something else, but in the beginning, there's a lot of chemicals in there, and they say roughly every time you wash, 50% of the chemicals that will ever wash out. So by that logic, if you've washed something 5 times, about 99% of the chemicals have washed out.
If they're going to.
If they're going to. So for people with sensitive skin, that's a good choice. However, you know, you still should a few other practical things to consider. Darker dyes tend to be more irritating. And by the way, dyes, there are several studies that show people with contact dermatitis, that means people who react allergically, and you know,
people with eczema, psoriasis, and even dandruff is considered a contact dermatitis.
70% react to the dye, and that's there's I can point people to it if they're interested to look into the study, because I found it very surprising that there are specific dyes, and they tend to be darker dyes that are highly irritating, and people often think.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, I guess I don't know the actual answer to this, but I would think logically darker dyes have more dye.
Yeah.
It takes more to create those darker.
Dye, it's basically, we talked about this before, basically it's a plastic. It's a synthetic material made from petroleum. It's literally made from exact same things as plastic. just plastic. The word means to form something, and a dye is not form. A dye
It's a
binds.
liquid.
Yeah, it binds to
fine.
the fiber, but it's made. It's a it's a persistent organic pollutant. That's the technical word for it.
And I think the other thing that's interesting is it binds to the fabric. It also binds to every other chemical
Mhm.
that it's right. So things like PFAS, if you're
Yeah,
buying something that is weather resistant or
yeah,
something like that. But formaldehyde to keep it, right? Or overseas they spray it with, phthalates or whatever. I know actually companies who spray fragrance on their clothing so that when it arrives
yeah,
and you open it up, it
yeah,
smells nice.
yeah.
And they don't have to disclose that. They don't have to tell
No,
you
no.
that. And so those dyes actually also have a lot of other chemicals that are hiding in them. And so when they bind to your clothing, it's all just bound into your
Yeah,
fabric.
the insane thing is this massive cocktail. Like
Yeah.
you're getting a huge cocktail, and you mentioned the 10,000 chemicals used in the textile industry. And then when you consider the combinations, it is endless, because one chemical or two chemicals that may not be worrisome by themselves, but when one lowers the skin barrier and then the other one gets into your body, and or maybe when they combine it's different, it becomes extremely complicated. And the thing is, it's all just like, yeah, let's go. And that's the worrisome thing. And that's kind of where we are very much in the beginning of this conversation as a society, that this is an issue. But anything, I mean, just talking about the environment, 73% of the microplastics in the ocean are just pure polyester. And I think around 30%. Sorry, 37, let me get this again. 37% of the microplastics in the ocean are from textile
From
fibers.
textiles, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that. It was actually really sad when we were in Bali. Balinese people
Mhm.
love the environment. They're very protective of the environment. And this fast fashion textile world, a lot of it gets washed up
Mhm.
on the islands in Indonesia. And so there's just a lot of trash that is
Mhm.
textile trash and plastic trash everywhere. And they're
Mhm.
trying to figure out, what to do with it. And so I just feel like there's going to have to be a shift where people are like, oh, plastic bottles are bad. Plastic, like I just switched my
Mhm.
espresso machine to one that doesn't have plastic tubing or like a plastic boiler where like the hot coffee goes
Oh,
into.
yeah.
But I think people can internalize and understand hard plastic, moldable plastic. Don't put plastic in your microwave. Don't put food in
Yeah.
plastic. I think we've all kind of come around to understanding and accepting that. I think it's going to be hard for Americans, especially because we love to consume, to understand that polyester clothing, all those cute shirts, those $10 things you're getting, that's plastic too.
Mhm.
And so I think that's just gonna be more education, more talking about it.
Yeah, and I think we are just starting. That's one of the things important for people like, oh, overwhelmed. If you take a step back, like this is just the beginning. We are just these microplastic studies. They're really starting to become really good. We've had a long time scientifically a problem to make good studies, because microplastic is a very broad category for whatever million different combinations of different chemicals. And if a plastic is round or has is serrated, it behaves completely different in the environment. So we're just starting to have these really good studies, and we will see more and more coming out, and people will just go like, I don't want that, that's stupid, right? And I think this is just happening. And I love speaking with you and and people with this similar mindset, because it's really conversations and educating each other. I did not know any of this whole thing I've been talking about 10 years ago. It's just not on my radar, and I had other things to worry about. And it just kind of became this Pandora's box that I think is really interesting. It's just one of the things. Hey, let's talk about it. Let's share what we know, let's share our worries, let's share practical tips. And I think one of the reasons why we start doing so well in the last year is just because a lot of people go like, you know what, I don't want that. I want better.
I want better.
And it's
Yeah.
possible. And it would make also the industry so much better. I mean, one thing that we always wanted to show, that this is possible to do, even to use plant dyes. And we have issues with manufacturers that say, oh, regenerative cotton, you please reserve for next year. And, that does not work for every company. But the more demand there is, the easier that
Yeah.
will become. And there is going to be a shift guaranteed.
Yeah, I think that we, the consumers, are going to drive this whole, and that's the way it's always been, right? It is rarely the government, the industry.
Yeah.
It's always been people have demanded better. People have said enough is enough.
Yeah.
Look at all the synthetic dyes that are now coming out of food. A whole bunch of pissed off moms made, and so I do think that it's going to take us speaking up. And I always tell people, I was a lobbyist for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And all it takes is you literally picking up the phone and calling the person who represents you in your district.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize you can literally pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Like, you can call them. Like, you hired them, right? Even if you didn't vote for them, you technically hired them. And you can pick up the phone and say, these are the things that I care about. And I always tell my audience, could you even imagine if all the people who listen to my podcast literally just one day picked up the phone and called their representative and said, I want PFAS regulation and legislation. We wouldn't be looking at those rules being rolled back right now. If they picked up the phone and said, I care about, heavy metals coming from factories. I care about the regulation of textiles. Like, I feel like if people just were empowered to pick up the phone and tell their representatives, then there would be enough pressure to actually do something about it. But if you're not going to pick up the phone, even though I'm really encouraging you to, what you can do is vote with your dollar. So supporting companies like yours, go get some organic cotton plant dyed sheets. I promise you, you'll start traveling with them. You will you will see the difference and you will be like, I can't live without these. If that's the first change you make, you guys give my audience a very generous discount. I have an affiliate code, 20% off.
20%
off. I'll have that linked in the show notes. But if you can switch out your sheets, then that's, like we said, you sleep 8 hours a day. So from there, try to get cotton for what ladies, bras, underwear, boxers, and then go to like the things you wear every day, all day. Maybe it's your nightgown or maybe it's your t-shirts. And then, the things that are not on your skin all day, maybe a little bit less of a priority. You can take longer to like do those things. Socks. I have literally Mate the Label had a huge sale over Black Friday and I literally bought like 25 pairs of their socks. And so just baby steps, do the best you can. If you are buying new clothes, try to buy cotton, wash it multiple times to get five times.
5 times for people with very sensitive skin, but do it at least, I would say once at least, twice for kids. Yeah, awesome. For sure.
Right. So are we going to wait another year before you come back?
No, I'm just going to stay here.
Yeah.
I wait here, you come back.
Thanks for being here. I'm glad this worked out. We'll have to meet in New York City again next time, a year from now. It's a date.
Okay, let's do it. Let's check in what's happening.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.